Okay, let's go to the Eastern Conference because Doc Rivers had some pretty direct sound saying the MVP race is now over. Um, Joel Embiid had half of his team's points in their win over the Celtics. 52 points by Joel. MVP conversation, but I want to start with Joel. Do you agree with Doc Rivers?
I'll let Richard go first.
I think for Doc Rivers, yes. And for Doc Rivers, yes. I think he believes that. I think you can go to Mike Malone and he can say that my player's averaging a triple double. You can go to Giannis last night who had a triple double. Like this isn't like one great game. He still sat out of the Jokic matchup for injury purposes. Your coach doesn't get to decide. While I love the emphasis that Doc is putting on it, as he should, as a coach should for his star player, because it's him taking up for him. But Doc Rivers doesn't get to decide the MVP race. I don't think that this was an exclamation mark. I think this was a hell of a game. He scored half their points. He's doing it against what's the kid's name? I can't even remember the kid's name. And then he's doing it against Al Horford, who's 40 years old, because no Robert Williams. So, he should be fucking cooking those dudes. It's not like you can switch. God, it's going to bother me.
Cornette?
Yeah, what?
Luke Cornette?
Yeah, he's doing it against Cornette, who's a serviceable big. He's doing this against Al Horford, who's 50. Robert Williams is the one guy that I'm not saying that Jokic couldn't go for 50 on him, but I'm not looking at him. It's not like they can switch, Jaylen Brown on him. They can't switch Marcus Smart. The dude's a fucking force. So he dominated as he should. They won the game as they should, in my opinion, given that they don't have a matchup for him. But your coach doesn't get to decide the MVP race. Let's look at the standings here, because the same thing. Right now, the Bucks have a 3-game lead on Boston. They have a 5-game lead on Philly. And so when the Bucks clinch best record, Budenholzer can get up on the stand and can say, oh, well, look, best record. We got the best player in the game. That's the MVP. We got the best record in the MVP, like our best record in the league. We've got the MVP. I think that's the end of the conversation. He can do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that really quick before we go to Channing?
Thinking of that, and after watching it, this was the most, if I was sitting down and I'm Doc Rivers and I'm thinking about Joel Embiid and this opportunity, I go, Jokic took his foot off the gas, right? As soon as Perk started saying stat padding, to me, it seemed like, and Jamal and a lot of people else who I talked to, it seemed like he just took his foot off the gas, right? To me, Joel Embiid saw that opportunity, started to get aggressive. This is a national TV game. Now, on Turner, we rarely, if ever, have one game. This was that one game. If you watch the 76ers play, yes, they won the game. These motherfuckers knew exactly what they were doing.
Oh, feeding them every time.
Every fucking time. If you saw, now mind you, he still has to go get 52. No Robert Williams, no Jaylen Brown. Yes, he still has to go get 52, which is a feat in itself. Mm-hmm. But he was barbecuing the whole team, but no one else was shooting until absolutely necessary. It was a showcase for people who have not watched Embiid to see his dominance. Now, can Embiid do that almost every night? Absolutely. He is leading the league in scoring. But last night was on purpose to make sure that Joel Embiid gets as many looks, as many touches, and looks the best for the purpose of him being the only show on TV that night.
Hey, wait a second. And that's what's adorable about this is It's funny that Doc Rivers will get up there and say this shit. Meanwhile, 2 days ago, they lost to the Bucks at home, or they lost to the Bucks on the road. And Giannis goes for 33 and was the leading scorer in the game. Right? So it's like, wow, he can go for 50 against Boston, where they're, obviously their bigs they're not necessarily equipped, but against the Bucks, who have Brook Lopez and have Giannis, They lose that game, and they were down as much as 20. They lost 117 to 104. So, like, now you go beat Boston 2 days later, and you're the MVP conversation race is over? Bro, be careful. That's disrespectful. That's disrespectful. 2 days ago, like 2 days ago, you lose to Giannis. A week ago, you don't show up for Jokic, and you go 50 against Boston and Cornette and Al Horford, and the MVP race is over. That's what I'm saying. Like, come on, guys. That's a coach being a coach. It's a hell of a soundbite coming off a hell of a game. That's all that shit is.
Yeah. I do think now, rewind all this. I do think Joel Embiid is the MVP. Me
We
personally.
said it last week. You and I both said that last week.
I
Yes.
still think this. I still think this, right?
Why is he over Giannis?
To me, I think Giannis's team, and this is okay, we're just going to go by players. I think number one, for me, if I had a vote, I look at who wants it. I look at who wants that title, who wants that responsibility, right? Who outwardly says that. Joel Embiid outwardly wanted it last year, outwardly wanted it this year. He got better than he was last year. His defensive effort.
Giannis is having a career high in scoring.
I understand, but
I'm just we can't just make an argument. This is my thing about these arguments, and I want to send it back to you, big fella. I want to send it back to you. A lot of times in this, we make the argument for the individual,
right,
versus against the other person. So if instead of making it for Embiid, make it a versus, because you're saying, one, that he wants it. We know these guys want it. They don't publicly say it very often, right? Jokic is a bit of a different breed. The last thing I'll say is that, like, Giannis is leading the lead in scoring. Or not leading the league in scoring. He's having a career high in scoring and playing less minutes. So when you look at production and doing something he's never done before, and they didn't have Chris Middleton for the first third of the season. Once they caught Boston, they passed Boston and have never looked back. And I know James Harden missed a ton of time, before the All-Star break. Everyone has to deal with that. I'm just merely saying that Embiid and Jokic and Giannis are so close, but like some of the ways that we frame it, I just don't understand it.
Really quick, actually, Joel is averaging 33 and Giannis is averaging 31. So in terms of, and I say these things just because, to your point, Rich, like when it comes down to a conversation like this, what is it that you really can point to give one guy the edge over the other? Like where do you go at this point? Because at the same time too, I think we talked about in our conversation last week with Perk that I actually do believe that Giannis probably should win it, but I think people are getting bored with him. It's the same conversation that we were having 5, 6, 7 years ago with LeBron. He would have had an opportunity, could have won the MVP, but people just kind of were like, meh. And so are you getting to that?
Yes.
I think sometimes, I don't know if we get bored. His team is fucking good. And that's it's not supposed to be a knock, but like Drew Holiday is nice. Brook Lopez is Defensive Player of the Year. So it seems like his responsibility of having to do everything and having to be beyond himself is a lot less, right? When he doesn't play, they still win, right? Like his team is stacked compared to the Sixers, compared to Boston. Giannis' team is stacked. Now, do I believe that should be put against him? No, but I can see that as an eye test. You go, yeah, you're amazing because look at this. You're like the number one three-point shooting team in the league. You're like top 5 in defense. You have 4 All-Stars on your team. Like what do you just have to be a 60% version of yourself and you can get 30. Like he played a game. I think they played the Pacers. But Drew Holiday had 51. And he had a light work 38, 18, and 11. And that's crazy, right? Like when's the last time someone on Joel Embiid's team had like a 40 ball and he had whatever it is? It just, to me, it's the eye test, and it may be the system. The eye test, strictly by no stats, I think by watching, and I've watched a lot of Joel and Giannis, I would put Joel over Giannis this year, just based on eye test.
Okay,
who's your
fair.
MVP, Rich?
Well, fair. I understand what you're saying. I think that's how Jokic ended up getting multiple MVPs. You're like, well, he's had to do so much, right? Like that was the conversation, right?
Right.
Like that was oh, well, he had to do all of this.
Right.
Right now, if we're gonna add that narrative into Embiid, does he have to do more than what Jokic does? Because Jokic, like I said, is averaging a triple double. He is the offense for their team. He is the pace. He does everything for them. Like that. But so that's what I'm saying. Like we're gonna fault Giannis. Giannis doesn't have a juggernaut. He doesn't
Yeah.
have a juggernaut of a team. He just has a very well constructed team that's deep, right? But they're not like, I wouldn't call them like, if they were to win the championship, I wouldn't call them this fucking Golden State Warriors. They're not a Miami Heat. They're not, one of these teams that you're just like, oh, it's them and everyone else.
No, totally. After
No,
watching,
and he had to carry so much. He just had to carry so much in that first third of the season to keep them within reach of the number one seed.